scale. Now let's talk about the demand consideration. The demand of services tends to be more inelastic, and the reason inelastic demand is more in service sector is because services is not just a good that you actually purchase, and if you feel dissatisfied you actually return it out and you can buy any other product from any other company. You invest a lot of time once you're utilizing that service. For example, if you talk about CompT'd University, again I'm giving you CompT'd's example because you can actually relate yourself with this institution. You have spent a lot of time here and you're still going to spend a lot of time here, so you may be able to understand my perspective on inelastic demand. For example, if another university comes to Pakistan and they offer you a 50% discount on admission, would you be interested to leave this university right now and be moved towards another institute? I don't think so. The reason is that it's not only about the money that you have spent. We have already discussed this thing. You have spent a lot of time. It's also about the image value. It's also about the personal value that you are receiving. It's also about the product value that you are receiving. So there are so many things that you have sacrificed in order to be here, and you are still sacrificing. So being an inelastic situation may not work in service sector because the price sensitivity is basically not that much effective when it comes to a service. I'm not saying it is not entirely the situation. There may be certain example. You talk about your car wash service, you talk about a parcel service, or you talk about an internet service provider, you talk about a GSM service provider. They are highly price sensitive industries, and people, they are actually willing to switch to other brand if they believe that they are being charged low from the other service provider. And even though in certain situations people may not be oriented towards them as well, but yes, the inelasticity of demand, it may not be that much. It does not have more tendency to happen. It does not have a degree to happen again more often when you talk about service sector. But now another very important demand consideration is the cross price elasticity. The concept of cross price elasticity, it says that if a price of a product increases, it will increase or decrease the demand of another product. For example, if there's a product A and if its price increases, it will decrease or increase the demand of product B. Now this typical cross price elasticity, it has two variations. We have one variation which is called the complementary products, another variation which we call a substitute product. So I'm going to discuss them one by one. For example, if we talk about complementary product, it says the effect of cross price elasticity, in which an increase in the price of a product A, it decreases the demand of the product B. Let's take an example. For example, if you go to a movie theater and you have realized that they have increased the prices of the tickets, what will happen is, what tends to happen here is that the people, they stop spending on different kind of other complementary service which are called product B. For example, they will stop spending on popcorns, they will stop spending on drinking Coke, or they will stop spending on different kind of food that is available. They may stop spending on the gaming zone, all kind of different complementary services which come with the cinema viewing experience. And if you talk about the substitute products or the type 2 cross price elasticity, it says that in which increase in the price of a product A, it increases the demand of the product B. So for example, if the cinema tickets, they go up, people, they may start moving towards other economical movie watching experiences. For example, they may switch to Netflix, or they may switch to Amazon Prime or Hulu, and there are so many other viewing experiences online which the people, they realize that they get online entertainment at a very economical or convenient pricing. For example, you can just have thousands and thousands of TV shows and movies just in 900 rupees if you talk about Netflix, or 1200 rupees if you talk about Netflix. So these cross price variation, this cross price elasticity is very much in play once you talk about service demand considerations. And just remember, it's a cross price elasticity. It deals with the increase of a price in product A, and it explains the responsiveness of demand for the product B. And it has two variations. You can have a complementary cross price elasticity, or you can have a substitute cross price elasticity. So now you may be familiar with the concept of price discrimination. It is also sometimes referred to as segmented pricing. And the price discrimination, it refers to the fact that sometimes a similar service or a similar product may be offered at several different prices to different group of people, different segments, different cohorts. The thing is that the product remains the same, the service remains the same, but based on the needs and wants of the customer, sometimes what happens is that you keep different prices, and you sell those products on different prices to different segments and different cohorts and different groups. So price discrimination is referred to as a viable practice to manage the supply and demand. Now in two ways you can actually smooth the demand, and we have already mentioned that what happens is that how these segments are created, how this discrimination actually happens. If you remember, in chapter number 3 we have discussed the concept of perishability, which refers to the inability of the service to be stored. So in doing so, we came up with two strategies. We used to call them early bird specials, we used to call them the matinees, and what we did, we actually gave the same service in different time slot in order to create a new demand in off-peak low capacity utilization periods. And what we did another way is flattening the peak by moving existing customers from peak to less busy time. For example, if you had a huge customer base at the evening time in a restaurant, what you did was you shifted those customers in the morning time, in the noon time, so you may be able to reduce the demand at the peak hours. In that way, doing so, you can actually manage your operations all day. You can also train your labor in the noon time, in the morning time. And similarly, there were other examples that, for example, you have seen student deals. The student deals mostly come in the noon time, because of the fact that students, they actually prefer to go out in the middle of the day, because they are studying in university and all the friends are gathered together. So what happens is the discrimination pricing, it actually is based on the needs of different customers and different group of customers, different cohorts and segments. And they actually, what they do is they discriminate the pricing. They charge different group of people with different set of prices. But there are certain things there which are actually needed here in order to make you understand that there are certain criteria, there is certain guidelines group that is actually required before you actually start implementing the price segmentation strategy. So there are certain guidelines that you must understand. For example, you talk about different group of customer must have different responses to the prices. So for example, if you have shifted the demand from middle of the day to the evening time, or you have shifted the demand from the evening to the middle of the day, and there has to be consumer who should give you different kind of responses to that price. So there should be certain customer who will come out from their homes in the middle of the day to watch movies, who will go to your restaurants during the morning time or the noon times. So basically, if there is no response to your actual offer, it means that your price segmentation strategy may not be that much effective, or price discrimination strategy may not be effective. Secondly, the thing is, the different segments must be identifiable, and a mechanism must exist to price them differently. For example, if students, they are coming to your restaurants in the middle of the day, you should be able to identify that they are students. You may check their ID card or somewhere in some other way. For example, all over the world there are certain strategies where students can get discounted rates on traveling options. So when any travel agent, any traveling organization, any government body who actually enables you for public transportation, there must be some sort of a mechanism through which they can identify that either you are students or not. So even the internet companies, the 4G companies, they sometimes have several kind of packages designed for students, and there has to be some sort of a mechanism in order to identify these segments, because if there is not, anybody can use that service, so there wouldn't be any sort of segmentation, there wouldn't be any kind of discrimination. So all the people, if they can utilize the same service, there's no point for you to launch that segmentation strategy. So the only logic in doing so is that you should be able to design a plan in which these segments, these cohorts can be identified. Any other thing is, no opportunity should exist for people in one segment who have paid a low price to sell their tickets to other segments. This is exactly what I said. There has to be a mechanism to identify these kind of people who are being charged differently. The segment should be large enough to make the size worth. Obviously, you are spending money, you are coming up with promotion strategies, you are launching new packages, new products maybe, and for that there has to be a large customer base in order to justify this exercise. So the cost of running the price segmentation strategy should not exceed the incremental revenues obtained. The cost should not increase as compared to the revenues that you are achieving. The customer should not be confused by using different prices. This is the most important thing, that if I am being charged differently and the other group is charged differently for the same service, there has to be a very clear instruction. There has to be a very clear understanding for me in order to differentiate myself from the others. I shouldn't be, worried. I shouldn't be bothered by the fact that why am I being charged differently. There has to be certain reasons for the customer to believe that these are the reasons through which they are being discriminated in terms of the pricing. So that is all about the price discrimination strategy. Now we are moving towards another set of consideration before you set the price, that is called the customer considerations. For example, price tends to be one of the few cues available to the consumer during the pre-purchase. The most important thing, one of the reasons the pricing is most important in service sector, is that the price is a sign of quality, the price is a sign of value. And just because services, they do not have some sort of a tangibility, so it's hard to be objective about the services, and that's why we said in our earlier chapter the services are subjectively evaluated. So they act as a signpost items. So customers, they actually judge the quality of the service by using prices as a cue. When it comes to goods, yes, we also use a price as a signal of the quality, but there are certain other variables through which we can actually understand the quality dimension. We can actually touch the product, we can actually smell them, we can taste them, we can use them, we can sample them, we can store them. There are so many other things that we can actually do in order to make sure that what we are receiving is quality products. But when it comes to services, there are very few items that can actually be the indicator of the quality of the product. That's why prices are one of the very few variables which actually serve as a cue. And then service customers are more likely to use price as a cue to quality. That's exactly what I said. The service customers tend to be less certain about the reservation prices. And what is a reservation price? The price that the customer considers to capture the value he or she places on the benefit. So basically there's a less certainty about the reservation prices. This is exactly related to what I said earlier. Now move towards the comparative considerations. Comparing prices of competitor is more difficult for service consumers. This is a very important thing for you to understand. I would like your input on it when we will meet next time, that why comparing prices of competitors is more difficult for a service customer. I have actually I have answered this question earlier, but you need to actually explain me, or you can actually go through the book, just try to find out yourself why the comparisons of prices with the competitors is more difficult. And the other important thing I would like to discuss here, the self-service is a viable competitive alternative. So self-service is basically one of the strategies that can actually make or break the entire service sector. For example, you can send your child to a college or a university. You can send your child to a tuition academy, and you can also teach them home. That's an option available in so many countries all over the world. The homeschooling concept is very much real, where parents, if they choose that they don't want to send their children in the early years of their education to a college, to a university, to a school, what they do is they can actually have them home tutored, home trained, and then they can give certain kind of exam, and their children, they can get different certifications and degrees. And then also there are several services that you can do by yourself at your home. You can sew your own clothes, you can prepare your own food, or you can go outside, you can cut your own hairs, or you can go outside, or you can actually decorate your entire house for say, or you can hire an interior designer, you can do some sort of electric work at home, or you can hire a plumber or electrician. And we actually see a lot of people around us who actually do all this stuff by themselves while they're at home. So basically you become the competitor of different companies. Self-service is basically a viable competitive alternative. You consider, whenever you are launching something, you need to understand to what extent, to what degree this product may be consumed as a part of a self-service alternative within customers' jurisdiction. So comparative considerations are also very important. They need to be understood before you actually launch a pricing strategy. And then we have profit considerations, in which the profit consideration, the most important thing is to understand that the price bundle makes complete sense when it comes to the services. Price bundling makes determination of individual price in the bundle of service more complicated as well, but it's, as I mentioned, price bundling is more effective in a service context. The reason is that the product, when you use a service or when you use a goods, most of the time they come on singular basis. They are not bundled up with so many services. For example, you buy a toothpaste, you buy a shampoo, you hardly get any kind of an additional service. Majority of the goods that we purchase at our home, they do not come with additional services, but the majority of the services that we use, they come with additional goods, or they come with additional services. You use internet, you need some sort of goods, you need some sort of service, you need GSM service, you need some sort of a SIM or a mobile phone, you need some sort of additional services that are required. You come to the university, you can understand the university is the best example, or an airline or a hospital is the best example, which comes with price bundling, because you understand this thing. This is not the only thing that you are utilizing. You are not only here to have education. There are so many other goods and services which are actually attached with these services, the primary services that you are consuming. So that is one of the reasons that when you are charged a certain amount of fee for a service, you can see on your fee voucher, you can see on your fee challan form that there are certain other services which are also attached along with the original education services, and there are so many other services which are not actually mentioned in those fee voucher. For example, I'm talking about the medical services, or I'm talking about counseling services or career development services, or I'm talking about sports, or I'm talking about cafeteria services. So basically this is kind of a price bundling. You talk about hospital, you come with nursing facilities, you talk about medication, you talk about operation, and there are so many things. You go through an airline, you understand there's food, there is medical services, there are so many things, but they are not primarily written on your ticket, but yes, they come with the actual product, they come with the actual bundle, they come with the actual package. So yes, the profit considerations are also very important, but you need to understand here's the price bundling. There is the the practice of marketing two or more products and one or a service in a single package at a single price, and it makes more effective in service context. It makes more sense when it comes to service. And you have certain product considerations compared to goods sectors. There tends to be many different names for price in service sector. Most of the time when you talk about goods, you will understand there is normally the word that we use is called the price or the cost. But when it comes to service, as I mentioned, that pricing in service is not just the amount we charge, not just the amount we pay, is the entire business model. So based on that business model, we tend to use several different names related to the service pricing. For example, when you pay the price of your university, you call it a fee. You do not use the word cost. You do not use the word price. You actually use the word fee. Once you are giving challan, or you actually use the word challan fee, or you might have heard the word for example retainer fees, or you have different kind of words which are called tariffs, or so these are different kind of names that we use for service pricing. So this is what he's trying to say. Then consumers are less able to stockpile by taking advantage of the discounted prices. You cannot actually store the services because they are being given at a reduced prices. There is a less chance to have a forward buying. But what is a forward buying? Is basically when retailers purchase enough product on deal to carry over until the product is being sold on deal again. So just because the services are perishable, there is no storage capability. That is one of the reasons that you cannot actually stockpile, and you cannot take that much advantage of a discounted price. And the forward buying is almost impossible because of the lack of tangibility, because of the lack of perishability. And moving on, the product line pricing tends to be more complicated. They are very difficult to create product line prices. As I mentioned in my earlier lecture, if you remember my lecture in marketing management, I explained you a context in which I was going through a KFC and I ordered a meal for 850 rupees. That was just one burger and one chicken fried piece, and then I reordered myself because I realized that on 1100 rupees I am getting almost 60-70% more, and that was only because the confusion that arises in my mind, that why am I have to pay 850 rupees for 20% when I can actually increase the price by only 30-40% and increase the order of that quantity up to 80%. And that is basically the concept of product line price is essentially more complicated when it comes to services. And one of the reasons they are more sensitive in service context is that they do not have any tangible elements, so it's difficult for the people to judge the actual quality based on the different varieties that are available in your product lines. And the product lines themselves, they create a lot of confusion for the customers because there are no tangibility. They cannot touch them, feel them, realize how much, to what extent the quality is there. So this what I'm trying to say is the practice of pricing multiple versions of the same product or grouping similar products together creates a lot of confusion for the customer because of lack of tangibility. For example, beginners, intermediate, expert level. You don't need to go to this example. You can just realize what I have said earlier, that once you have different kind of services under a single category, that is called a product line, which essentially performs the same function, or either they are sold at the same price range, or either they are sold through a same distribution channel. That's the basic criteria of calling some group of products a product line, and that creates a lot of difficulty for the customers and also for the company once they're establishing a product line price strategies. And then we have some legal considerations. The opportunity of illegal pricing practice to go undetected is greater for services and goods. I'm going to put that question in your code again. Once we will meet, you need to answer me that why the opportunity for illegal pricing practices to go undetected is greater for services and goods. But I'm going moving forward. The consumers, to consumers, the issue is one of fairness and dual entitlement. Cost-driven prices increases are perceived as fair, where demand-driven prices increase are viewed as unfair. If you have a tangible product, you know how much cost of goods sold can be, you know how much actual ingredients would have costed. If somebody is overcharging you for a piece of burger, you can always estimate why is he charging me differently, why is he charging me unfairly, because this burger would not have costed you more than, let's say, 100 rupees, 200, 300 rupees, but if he's charging you about 600 rupees, you can always find out. So in terms of the quality of the product, in terms of the ingredients that we are using, it's easy for customer to trust the good, but it's difficult for them to trust the service. And that is why people, they can overcharge you without even being detected. For example, if you go to a doctor and the doctors say, you know, I'm a very competent person, I am going to charge you 2,000 rupees per appointment, you cannot do anything about that really, or the government or any legal entity cannot do anything about it, because that is entirely depending upon that human intellect, his ability to judge, his ability to treat, his ability to diagnose, his ability to prescribe, and all of these qualities, they cannot actually be quantified and cannot be actually converted into a legal situation which can actually be claimed in the future. And that is why services, most of the time, you will see a lot of different variations in services, and especially in terms of prices. And that is the reason why the opportunity of the illegal pricing practices is greater for the services than goods. I was expecting that you were going to answer me this, but the second point got me confused and I explained it myself anyhow. And then we have some final thoughts on the pricing. The price should be easy for the consumers to understand. It should represent the value to the customer. It should encourage customer retention, facilitate the customer relationship with providing the firm, reinforce customer trust, and reduce customer uncertainty. A very generic statement, very generic school of thoughts about how a pricing strategy should be, created. Whatever we have studied so far, they were all about different, considerations or criteria, and they were most important from the marketing perspective, because when it comes to marketing, we are not here to calculate the actual price, but we need to understand the implication of those pricing strategies that are created on consumer mind and the consumer perceptions. So basically, whatever we have studied so far, they were all related to various kind of perceptions and various kind of judgments of customers regarding the pricings that are being charged by the company. So thank you everyone. I would expect that you people should go through this chapter and make yourself convenient, make yourself at ease with this chapter, and try to understand all the strategies that I have discussed, try to understand all the considerations that I have discussed. I do not expect you guys to reread and recall and just remember all these guidelines, but you should be able to understand, you should be able to answer all the strategic things that I have discussed from the learning point of view and obviously from the point of view of your exam. So thank you very much. Take care. Allah Hafiz. See you next week.